Hello and welcome to Health Professional Radio. I'm your host, Neil Howard. Thank you so much for returning for another segment. We're going to be speaking with returning guest, Dr. Lloyd Miller. He's joining us to talk about some recent data that was presented concerning TREMFYA, saying that it provides safe and durable skin clearance through 5 years in moderate to severe plaque psoriasis. Welcome back, Dr. Miller. How have you been?
I've been well. Thank you, Neil. It's a real pleasure to be with you today.
For those who aren't familiar with you as a contributor, give us a bit of a professional background and talk about your role at Janssen.
Thank you, Neil, for that opportunity. So my name is Lloyd Miller. I'm a MD, Ph.D. trained clinician scientist in dermatology. I was in academic dermatology with 12 years at UCLA and 8 additional years at Johns Hopkins. Treating patients, teaching medical students and residents dermatology, and running an independent research lab in skin immunology. Prior to joining Janssen almost 3 years ago as their Immunodermatology Disease Area Stronghold Leader, and at Janssen, I'm responsible for the portfolio in our dermatology diseases.
Well, if you would, give us an overview of the information that was presented at AAD concerning TREMFYA.
So it's my pleasure, and I really want to give an overview of the latest analysis of TREMFYA or guselkumab in both our patients with psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis. Shared at this year's American Academy of Dermatology meeting in Boston. There are 3 key points I'd like to share. First, psoriasis is a devastating skin disease with significant unmet need, including potent social and psychological effects. And knowing this, we at Janssen are dedicated to developing therapies with the potential to address these needs. Secondly, the latest analyses from data from 2 5-year psoriasis studies, Voyage 1 and Voyage 2, show that TREMFYA provided durable skin clearance in a majority of adult patients with moderate to severe plaque psoriasis, regardless of their baseline disease characteristics and comorbidities they might have, like obesity or diabetes. And finally, further analyses show TREMFYA provided meaningful clinical improvements across healthcare quality of life measures, including social relationships, ability to make interpersonal relationships, and sexual function for people with psoriasis, as well as fatigue in both psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis patients. And to my first point, that psoriasis is a devastating skin disease with significant unmet need, including potent social and psychological effects. And it is estimated that 125 million people worldwide live with plaque psoriasis, which is an immune-mediated skin disease that results in overproduction of skin cells, leading to inflamed scaly plaques that can be itchy or painful. And we know that nearly 60% of psoriasis patients report the disease to be a large problem with their everyday quality of life. So in addition to the skin plaques, psoriasis can affect or impact a person's physical and emotional health, including their relationships and ability to handle stressors of life. And knowing this, we are dedicated to researching patients' healthcare-related quality of life and developing therapies with the potential to address these needs. On my second point, the latest analyses of our 5-year data show that TREMFYA provided durable skin clearance in the majority of adult patients with moderate to severe plaque psoriasis, regardless of their baseline disease characteristics and comorbidities like obesity or diabetes. And this was done through a pooled post-hoc analysis of the Voyage 1 and Voyage 2 studies, demonstrating that TREMFYA across many different subgroups, regardless of their disease severity and treatment history, they had 80% of those patients achieved and maintained skin clearance for those 5 years of the study. In a separate post-hoc analysis of the Voyage 1 and Voyage 2 data, TREMFYA also demonstrated high sustained levels of skin clearance among patients with and without metabolic syndrome, which is a group of conditions, including obesity and high blood pressure, that increase the risk of heart disease, stroke, and diabetes in psoriasis patients. And in addition, a pooled analysis of 7 different phase 2 and 3 studies support the demonstrated safety profile of TREMFYA through 5 years in moderate to severe plaque psoriasis. And finally, Neil, on my last point, further analyses show TREMFYA provided meaningful clinical improvements across healthcare quality of life measures, including social and sexual function for people with psoriasis and fatigue in both psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis. And in a post-hoc analysis, TREMFYA-treated patients with moderate to severe psoriasis reported improvements in social relationship difficulty and sexual difficulties as their skin symptoms improved. In addition, 2 new analyses show greater proportion of patients taking TREMFYA compared with placebo achieved meaningful improvements in fatigue in both moderate to severe plaque psoriasis and active psoriatic arthritis. All these results I just mentioned add to the comprehensive TREMFYA research program at Janssen and demonstrate the importance of researching therapies to address a variety of symptoms of psoriatic disease to meet the range of patient needs.
Well, what does the study suggest about past the 5-year mark?
We didn't follow patients longer than the 5 years. 5 years these are the longest data we have, and Janssen was, we were very happy that we were able to extend the trial beyond the initial trial period to include 5 full years of data. So longer data, we did not conduct in the Voyage 1 and Voyage 2 studies.
Were there any psychological considerations taken as far as professionals? Were there psychologists involved as far as the sexual and social dysfunction aspects of the study?
So most of these patients in the Voyage 1 and Voyage 2 are seen by their dermatologists going to clinical trial sites, and they're given very standardized questions that we know that are verified, such as the Dermatology Life Quality Index, the DLQI, which is an assessment of many patients' daily function. And it also asks questions about interpersonal relationships, intimacy, and sexual health. And those are the questions we got from the patients. So they are patient-reported outcomes about these. What I want to stress is it's really, from this trial alone, it was really quite incredible of how common sexual difficulty that was reported from patients. And we looked at male and female patients, and roughly about a third of these patients at the beginning of the trial before therapy reported sexual difficulty. And by the end of 16 weeks, which was the first primary endpoint, that 1/3 of patients, as their skin cleared, only 3% still reported difficulty in sexual function. Similarly, with social relationship development, depending if you're male or female, around between 31 and 42% reported difficulty in those interpersonal social relationships. And again, by the end of 16 weeks, less than 3% still were reporting difficulty in those social relationships. So you can see how TREMFYA had a major impact on patients' quality of life with psoriasis.
Well, if there's anything that you'd like to add, and then give us a source where listeners can learn more.
Well, I'd like to, first of all, mention that in addition to these results reported at the American Academy of Dermatology with TREMFYA in psoriasis, we're not only impacting the clearance of skin, and again, most people maintained clear skin, almost 90% clear skin for 5 years with a safety profile that was with similar adverse events as placebo-controlled patients. In addition to this 5-year study, Janssen is really committed to psoriasis patients. I just want to mention one example of this is shortly before the American Academy of Dermatology meeting, Janssen announced the study start of the Visible clinical trial, which was the first of its kind large-scale prospective trial dedicated to Black, Hispanic, Asian, Indigenous, and other people of color living with moderate to severe plaque and scalp psoriasis. And the goal of this study was to really break down barriers to biological treatment for psoriasis and improve health outcomes of all patients. And we really wanted to design a study to create a more equitable and inclusive clinical research process. We're doing new approaches to enrollment, retention, diagnosis confirmation, broader community engagement, investigator training support, and new data components. And we are working hard toward a new standard where diversity in clinical trials is both expected and necessary to relentlessly advance care for all patients, which is why we've engaged healthcare providers and leading voices in dermatology to launch this Visible trial.
I appreciate you coming back as always, Lloyd. Thank you so much for joining us again.
It's my pleasure, Neil. It's great to talk to you again.
You've been listening to Health Professional Radio. I'm your host, Neil Howard, in conversation with returning guest Dr. Lloyd Miller. Audio copies of this program are available at hpr.fm and healthprofessionalradio.com.au. You can also subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, listen in, download it SoundCloud, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Health Professional Radio.